Welcome everyone to the Sustainability and Profitability podcast. This is the intro 101 to sustainability reporting. It's a way that it's going to be able to help a lot of organizations that are starting out or they're looking to start on their sustainability reporting, where they need to go, what kind of questions, all of the questions that you would have in the beginning. Do I file? Where do I file? All those questions will be taken care of today in the first initial podcast. I have with me Claire. Claire Bataillie. Hello. We're going to go through the 5 most important questions that we've been hearing from executives all over industry. It doesn't matter which industry, but as long as they have to start filing a sustainability report, they're baffled. We know that there's 1,200 points in the reports, in the ESRS report, but so confusion is there. Where do they start? Question is, do we file a report? That's the first question. So let's see, who files a report? What kind of company? Where do they need to be?
Indeed, the first main question to ask ourselves is, do I need to file a report? The answer is actually yes, depending on a few criteria. Then if you are an EU company that is over 250 employees and or with a turnover above 40 million euros or with total assets exceeding to 20 million euros, you should file a sustainability report under the CSRD.
2024.
2024 to be filed in 2025.
Correct.
For the year 2024, except if you are a listed SME, there you will need to comply with the CSRD, but a bit later than the companies with 2 out of the 3 other criteria I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Plus, if you are not meeting these requirements, you may also need to comply with the CSRD. Not exactly comply, but to answer to a lot of the questions that are asked under this CSRD, just because your clients, your suppliers that must comply with this regulation will need to ask you about.
We'll want to know these questions. We'll need to know the answers for their own reports.
Exactly. Then you'll need to feed indirectly their reports, their constraints, their requirements, and then finally actually need to comply with those at least questions. Yeah, definitely.
So, okay. So pretty much if you're EU, 250 employees, over 40 million in turnover per year, with 20 million in assets, you have to report as a European company. If you're below that, it's a good idea to start at least looking at what needs to be reported and start doing at least a CSRD report, which is not necessarily the big kahuna, the ESRS. So for that one, you can start getting ready, basically. It's going to help your suppliers. It's going to help your business partners.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's going to get you ready for when you do need to start the reporting because, as you know, legislation's changing, and it's changing all the time. And they're dropping the number of employees that organizations that need to report to even below the 250, and that's for Europe. And we know that each country in Europe, it's got its own even stricter sometimes regulatory things. But starting just with the ESRS, if you're a EU company, report if you have these 3 things.
Yes,
for sure.
Exactly. With another one that is, if you are a listed SME, even if you don't meet the 3 criteria I mentioned earlier, or at least 2 of the 3, if you don't even comply, meet those requirements, criteria, you also need to comply with this regulation because you are listed.
Because you're listed.
And
okay.
There is also a few other details. If you're not if you're not an EU company, for example, you are a Swiss company with significant activities in the EU, you also need to comply with the CSRD.
So Swiss companies, that work with EU companies, they have to do the CSRD.
Yeah, for example, they can have a subsidiary in
Yes.
Europe, or they can have, for at least 2 years, a turnover that is above 150 million euros. Then they need to comply with this EU regulation because they operate in EU.
Got it. But as a Swiss company, there's a very strict Swiss regulation as well. It's not as strict as the EU, but there are some specific numbers that companies, like if you're a Swiss company with how many, because we do have to, even in Switzerland, we have to report.
Yes,
So,
and we can be afraid of this, let's say, overlaps or two parallel regulations. Actually, there are a lot of similarities,
Yes.
and one can fit the other and the other way around. The only difference for Swiss company needing to comply with the Swiss regulation is that the number of employees is a bit higher, up to 500 employees. But
Yeah.
then the other criteria are actually the same ones as the ones in the EU.
okay, so in terms of million, we're staying in with the CHF, we're staying with the Swiss franc. We're not.
No, of course, yeah.
But other than that, it's pretty much the same numbers. 20 million in a balance sheet and sales over 40 million, which is great. And there's other listed companies that probably have to do the same thing. We'll have all of the detailed information. By the way, there's an ebook that you can download with all this information, step by step. They'll guide you through, do we need to report? Do I fit in that category? That's going to be available at the end of the podcast. So let's continue. So we're talking about EU companies, we're talking about Swiss companies that are working with the EU. So regulation applies over Swiss companies as well.
Would be the same for companies from other continents.
From other continents, exactly. So any company that does business with the EU over a certain amount, it's going to need to file a sustainability report, basically.
Indeed.
Great, fantastic. How about the U.S.? How about North America, specifically the U.S., because it's one of our markets, and would like to know, because there's a lot of lack of knowledge about where to start. Regulation is different. They don't have the European Commission on that. They have other regulatory bodies. So
Yes.
Where do the U.S. companies stand?
Well, actually, the regulation is about to come. There are discussions from the SEC.
Yeah.
That is wanting the companies to report on climate, especially, but actually, on sustainability more broadly. This should arrive quite soon. Then I would recommend that the US companies also start, have a look at those projects and regulations, maybe, for example, from the EU, to also have an idea of which kind of questions they can be asked for also in the US directly.
Again, all that is in the ebook. But in terms of global reporting, does every country have that? Do we talk about organizations that have to report? It doesn't matter which country they're in.
Actually, I'm not sure how all the countries already do have a regulation on sustainability reporting. At least in the EU is requiring it.
Very clearly.
Yeah.
Very clearly.
And I also think that it is the sense of the story. I don't know how to say it. That these constraints will come more and more. Yeah.
Okay. Why all of these regulations? Like, what are we talking about here?
That's a very good question. For me, it's a really important one to try to understand why such regulations on transparency again. Actually, the short answer would be to avoid greenwashing, because companies tending to develop on those topics are sometimes misleading in terms of their communication. But then if we take the even bigger picture, it's really important to understand that these regulations, especially in the EU, I will talk about the EU, are part of the Green Deal. The Green Deal, the EU Green Deal, is actually a roadmap that tends to go towards carbon neutrality, but with this idea of trying to make everybody working towards it and not also forgetting about the sustainability of the profits of the companies. Meaning, it's really a question of linking sustainability to business and not only focusing on, even if really important, the environment and carbon itself.
And we agree, because a company cannot dedicate any sort of capital, any sort of resources to the transformation towards sustainability without them being profitable. So you have to start with a profitable company, and you have to keep it that way as you integrate that. So
exactly, it's really trying to foster economic growth and environmental protection at the same time. By 2050. A first step of this is about transparency, because we need to know to be able to act together, especially if we want to make synergies between economic actors, companies, governments, everybody working together to be able to finally go towards more sustainability. And then that's why CSRD exists. In the corporate world, let's say, you also have a regulation that is more for the financial companies, because financial companies play a special role in the economic
it's a very particular sector.
And then to make them really try to work together, those parallel regulations about transparency exist. Sorry.
But we're talking about this. So the European Green Deal is the first time I hear any sort of profitability, when it comes to sustainability reporting and ESG, basically. But there are opportunities in this. So where is the opportunity in starting to start, to set up the sustainability framework, basically, within your organizations, and actually start implementing that and integrating it into your business practice? What are the advantages? And
of course, in my view, there are a lot of opportunities. My first comment would be that actually, if you want to lose money with sustainability reporting, you can lose money because you just want it, Then if you start thinking that you should rather invest in sustainability reporting, then it will be more profitable, because you will set up things the correct way, let's say, and then
that align with what you're wanting to do versus doing them for having to do them. Is that what you're saying?
It's really changing the mindset and really realizing that actually this regulation can be an opportunity, because as you saw in terms of background, it was meant to have this holistic approach and not focus on sustainability only, even if I don't really like talking about this way. I think you understood me. And then really take it as it was conceived and designed and use it this way. For me, there is a key element in this regulation that is really important to understand, that they really wanted to make those things connected, business or profitability and sustainability. This is the notion of double materiality.
Okay, that's a big concept that people have had some issues kind of understanding, but it's super simple. We're talking financial materiality and we're talking impact materiality.
Indeed.
So it's basically how the company affects the world and how the world affects the company. It's right. So it's kind of simple. Do your operations, get affected by a storm, by a hurricane, by flooding, by lack of water?
Exactly.
Or the rising water levels in a particular facility? Yes. Okay. Is the other way around, right? The other way around would be,
how can my business affect my stakeholders in general, meaning the environment, because it is one which is providing ecosystem services.
Right.
the clients, the suppliers, and all your stakeholders actually. This is how indeed how those elements can affect my business and how my business can affect them in return.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about this. Then it's a double lens approach that helps in the end reduce the risk of doing harm and being harmed by those factors.
At the same time, pretty simple.
Yeah.
So if the company is answering yes to both, then they have to file this particular report.
Yeah, I mean, they have to file it in any case.
In any case.
But then, thanks to it, they will be able to understand better their risks in terms of sustainability. And yeah, both ways.
Also, out of the 1,200 questions, they don't have to answer all of them, because if they're only answering yes to one, not to both, to the financial and the impact materiality. Is that correct?
Exactly, yeah. You are referring to the ESRS, which is the framework that is helping comply with the CSRD.
Correct.
For example, in Switzerland, it's a bit different. You don't have any framework that you really need to follow. You have a bit less constraints to be able to report, but actually I would really recommend to try to use this ESRS to at least get inspired in terms of what you need to concretely report on.
Okay. It seems complex enough, and of course it is. We'll have more details in the ebook, because we can only touch on very high level things in a way. There's a lot of complexity in all of this stuff. So no problems. You'll see it's there. There'll be all the answers kind of spelled out with links to everything that we need to cover today. But in terms of, so we're filing. Let's say we're filing. When are we filing? To whom are we filing? Do we need to have a very particular format that we're filing in? Like, what are the, small details that we need to understand as a company? Our clients as a company need to understand what they need to do to begin with.
The first question we need to answer is, when do we need to file? The answer is for the year 2024 in 2025. For listed SMEs, it's 1 year later, the year 2025 in 2026.
Okay.
And for the Swiss ordinance, it's also about this year.
Mm-hmm. So let's get to work.
Indeed.
There's a lot of work.
It's indeed, and the idea is really to try to go also at the same time slowly and safely, like doing the things correctly, and it's okay if it's not 100% down. I would
in
say.
the first year, yeah.
In the first year.
But it needs to be filed, because I was doing some research obviously on this, and the penalties for not filing
are huge.
Oof.
Can be huge.
Oh my lord! They can be pretty big, depending on the company, depending on all kinds of things, and 10 million euros for non-filing.
This is I think in Germany. Because indeed
up to 10 million euros.
10 million. Yeah, actually I didn't answer to your question about filing. Then you need to produce it and to integrate it into your annual reports.
Correct.
These reports are filed
in the first quarter. Yeah.
But also I filed for the I'm sorry, I don't have it in English. Like, you need to file it to the local authorities.
Okay.
If you are in France, you need to file it
to the French government,
to the
whoever you're filing your annual report to.
Exactly.
So nothing changes there, really.
No,
so you're just
really.
you're just bringing your sustainability reporting into your annual report, which makes sense, because financial data, all the traceability and transparency should be there, and then you're filing it to the exact people that you were filing before. So you don't have to start looking at the EU or other places to start filing for.
Exactly. There is another element, which is that this will also progress.
Yeah.
And that you'll need to also file in a kind of IT format.
Yeah.
that will feed or potentially feed an EU platform, but this is for later. It's just that the constraints also in terms of format of reporting may evolve. As you say, the regulation is evolving all the time.
They're already telling us this is what's coming.
Exactly.
Get ready for it.
Yeah, and this shows the importance of data management. You already need to make sure that you are building the correct architecture to be able to feed the history of data.
Yes.
Because you'll in the end need to indeed feed those IT formats on top of the report at the end of the annual of the annual report.
And this different format has nothing to do with, let's say, sustainability reporting platform, like one of those out of many sustainability reporting platforms that you can integrate with your systems, with your it's nothing like that, but that might help. We'll see how that evolves. All right, so we're doing great with with the penalties and the time the framing. But how long does it take to build a sustainability report? How long does it take to set it up? Set up the framework in your organization. Let's start there, because building a sustainability report, once you have everything set up, it's probably a lot easier than setting up.
Exactly. Then indeed it takes longer when you start than for the years after.
Clearly, because everything's already set up. It's set up already.
Actually, it's a difficult question because it really depends on where you stand already on sustainability-related reporting, KPIs, data, the size of your company, the complexity of your organization. Then I think it could vary quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I would say that at least 1 to 2 years is the minimum.
Can they do it in like 2 months? If it's a smaller company, like what's the smallest amount basically that, like, the shortest time? Because there's a lot of companies that have it's October 2024, and some haven't quite started because they don't know where to start. So we're trying to help those organizations. How quickly can they set up the framework?
For me, it can't be so rushed, but at least starting with something is good, and something that is maybe not maximal, but optimum is already very good. They can be helped maybe on this, get advice, and involve different internal stakeholders in their value chain to be able internally, as a company, to be able to do it the most efficient possible way.
Besides the fact that we know it's going to be difficult to integrate just the idea of sustainability within an organization, that's not the main drivers. The main driver for an organization has always been profit, but now we're bringing sustainability inside the operations. It looks like it needs to change pretty much every vertical, within an organization. And so it takes a lot of time to set up the structure, the reporting structure, not even talking about the steps, to do sustainability reporting, to do sustainable projects and implement solutions in your organization. But for that to happen, what kind of changes an organization that needs to do? What kind of structural changes? Do they need to have a lot of internal people, a lot of new people? Can they work with what they have already? Do they need more staff? Do they hire consultants?
It could be a mix of all of this. Actually, it really again depends on the level of maturity, on sustainability, on the level of integration already or not. I think it's a mix of all of this. I really would suggest not trying to open an Excel spreadsheet and try to do sustainability reporting this way, because this won't be sufficient even for year one. I think, again, it's a question of, I'm not the local authority, but I would guess that they really try to understand, starting from the auditors, because the auditors need to check those reports.
Right.
It needs to be validated by those auditors. Then make them understand, and they can potentially accompany through this, understand the architecture and the organization that is set up to be able to achieve this report or get this data.
Okay. There's a lot of resources to be talked about, but we talked a little bit about the kind of cost in terms of resources. It's going to depend on the company, how many people they're going to need to hire to set this up, consultancies or actual employees. But what's the actual cost of setting up the structure? We've seen some reports, on the first year setting up that are pretty spectacular, but I think it also depends on the company size. So.
Yeah, indeed. Really, having one figure is. Do you have one? Because this is a question I also ask myself. It can really vary a lot depending on the company and organization. I know there are some studies from a consultant, big companies.
One of the big fours has done an analysis of all the companies that have basically integrated and how much it costs them to do the full sustainability framework reporting part. And the first year is, penalizing. It's about $600,000 US, because this was, so.
It's a huge number.
It's a huge number for a small company, but once it's set up, it's easier to justify, the cost in next year and after that, because once it's set up, it makes it easier to kind of figure out. Obviously, you're going to need some help with that. Figure out where you can do better and where your profits can increase as well.
Indeed, that's really my opinion. Like I'm convinced that if you do the things the right way, if you decide to consider it as an investment rather than a cost, it will sooner than later finally help you achieve more profitability. Because you'll reduce your risk, because you'll improve your relationship with the different stakeholders. It includes reputation, but not only, and also generate other savings. There are a lot of examples. I think about this huge company that is Unilever, that really used their sustainability report before it was required by the regulation, because there are a lot of different standards that help you also report on these elements. They finally, thanks to their report, understood that they were wasting a lot of money in energy efficiency, for example. And then they succeeded within maybe 15 years, around something, over 15 years, reduced their carbon emissions from more than 60%, 64, I think. And they succeeded also to improve. They saved a lot a lot of money, over $1 billion.
Makes sense.
Dollars, or
60% Unilever.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a significant amount of money. But I want to kind of end it on that thought. I want to end it on the thought that sustainability has been seen as a cost, has been seen as a penalty, has been seen as you have to do this, and it kept clashing with business and with profitability. We are now in the time where that is completely changing, and it's if you look at it properly, it can benefit the company and all of its stakeholders, including leadership, including customers, shareholders, everyone, and obviously the planet too.
Let's hope.
So this was, I hope, was enough information for the first episode.
That's a lot, yeah.
That's a lot to digest, and they'll have the ebook, and then episode 2 and 3 and 4 will dive a little bit deeper into what all of this stuff is and how to actually get moving in the right direction. And in the meantime, if you have questions, we're here. We'll talk to you later. Bye.